Alright everyone, welcome to my video which I'm doing a project on the evolution of the Roman sword. Please take this time now to look in the description. At the very top there is actually a link where you can go and see this project. Please do click it right now so you can see the pictures and the words a lot better, because for some reason, and I apologize about it, it's not that great on my screen and it's not great on yours either. So let's go ahead and jump right into this. Before the Gladius we have the stone dagger, which was obviously a thrusting only weapon. It had little to no cutting capability, and depending on what the finder could find, it was either made of bone or stone. Now, due to the nature of stone, if you have a longer weapon, it's going to actually break. So, therefore, it's going to cause problems if you have a large weapon. And personally, I'm not too crazy about getting up close and personal. Now, for my personal verdict, I would much rather have this as a sidearm, if at all possible, and my primary arm would be a spear, because the spear has a lot more reach than a stone dagger. So, yeah, that's my take on it. Alright, so cruising along to the Hallstatt sword, pretty much the size is almost tripled from the stone knife, which is a plus there. I mean, I would much rather have a longer weapon than a little old measly dagger. Who would want the dagger? The dagger is just good for a sidearm, as we all know. I'm done ranting about the dagger. It turns out the Hallstatt sword is actually made of bronze, which thank God we finally got a metal, because I mean, really, the metal makes a huge capability. It also gives you the capability of cutting, which is a lot better than just thrusting. So once that opponent is past your point, you can still cut them. And then, once they're in pain and agony, you can turn around and shank them, which that's a plus there too. But turns out the only drawback about the bronze is that it's going to lose its edge pretty quickly on hitting a sword or a shield, which isn't that bad because you can repair bronze relatively easily. But you got to do it off the battlefield. Alright, finally moving on to a good weapon, the iron sword. It's the exact same length of the Hallstatt sword, so the size does not matter here. But however, the material, the iron sword is stronger than the bronze sword. It can hold an edge 3 times more, which, who would not want that? It's like having the waterproof phone versus a normal phone today. But we're not worried. This project ain't on phones, it's on swords. So, personal verdict, the iron sword is so much stronger than the Hallstatt sword. But the only issue with the iron sword is that the repairability off the battlefield, which you're going to have to make a whole new sword, take apart the sword, and put it back together if you have one chip missing. Because, I mean, who wants edge damage on their sword? But that does not matter now, because we are actually about to go on to a new sword, which is so much stronger than this piece of junk. Even though I shouldn't call it a piece of junk, but forget this. Let's go to the next sword. 4th century BC. And here we are, finally, the Roman Gladius. Average length is about 27 inches. Here's what it looks like today. Obviously, everyone knows what it looks like. Now, finally, a weapon that's good. The Roman Gladius is obviously Roman. Why would it be called Roman Gladius if it wasn't Roman? Come on, wake up. Get with the program here. The material is actually made of steel. No telling what kind of, but I'm guessing carbon. Low carbon steel. My personal verdict is that I would much rather have this sword over any of the other swords featured in this video so far, because the steel has so much of a better chance of holding up an edge than another sword, such as like the Hallstatt sword or the iron sword, whatever. I mean, really, this sword, it holds up an edge so much longer, and it's very difficult. It was very difficult to damage it by parrying or being blocked, whatever. Which still doesn't mean that it didn't have its flaws, though. It still didn't have the reach, though. It still didn't have much reach at all, which I will come back to that in a minute. Turns out that there was more than one type of the Gladius. I know that all of y'all out there are just like, wait, what? But, however, it is true. There's several types of Gladiuses. Well, or Gladii, however you want to put it. Turns out that we have, for starters, we have the full-hem Gladius, which is made for thrusting and still has the very strong Celtic leaf shape, meaning that it's the point, then you have a broad area, then inner area, then the broadest point. And so, yeah, that's pretty much that one is. This one is made for thrusting. And here we are, we have the mains, or however you pronounce it. Turns out that this one is actually still made for thrusting, but it has a cleaner leaf shape. Not completely gone, but it has a very clean leaf shape out of all of these. Then we have the Pompeii. Obviously, we all know where this was made. Where do you think it was made? I'm not going to tell you, I just told you. However, the Pompeii was actually still made for thrusting, but however, it got rid of the leaf shape completely altogether. Wait, there was something wrong with the Gladius this entire time? Yes, there totally was. It had the very same length as the Hallstatt sword, what the Celtic enemies had, which was pretty bad. It had very poor length. The Gladius was still short, like I said, which it gave you a very hard time whenever you had to go for a low parry when you did not have your shield, which was still very rare, but however, it was still something good to know. Not saying that it was impossible to go for a low parry, but it was going to be very difficult. And what about the cavalry? Since they're on horses, they gotta have extra reach, right? Like, really, come on. So what did the Romans do? Did they just deal with it? Do you know that? Me neither. But however, they didn't deal with it. Alright, so here we come, 3rd century AD. Here comes the Roman Sparta, which the average length on this thing was actually pretty monstrous compared to the others, which was at a good old 32 inches. And here's what it looks like, which ain't much different. Oh my goodness, this was like the cell phone of the 3rd century. What would you have done without it? Okay, so the point of balance of this thing was about 6 inches, which was actually pretty good for balance. Pretty much made the blade a bit front heavy, but then again, the blade got a couple inches longer. So, yes, it's still pretty good for the Roman cavalry, which they desperately needed it. It's just like internet today. They couldn't have lived without it, which some of them still died, but that doesn't matter now. It's still made out of about the same steel, and personal verdict, the Sparta is so much better. It gives you so much a better time when you're going for a low parry, and it's so much better for the cavalry. Like, really. And whenever you're pointing it at someone with a shorter weapon, you're like, back up, son. I'm very dangerous. Even good things weren't made to last. Turns out that there was a problem the entire time that not one person noticed. There was no crossguard on any of these swords featured in this video, not including the Viking sword that's obviously right in front of you. Turns out that the Gladius actually lacked a crossguard, which protected the user's fingers. Gosh, imagine how many people had lost limbs because of that. I really don't know. I'm not researching how many people did that. But, I mean, really, you want your fingers to be protected. No crossguard. Why? But out of all seriousness, yes, the crossguard was very useful for half sorting. Look that up if you want on your own. And yeah, okay, let's just go on to the next slide. Okay, so did y'all know that the practical use of the Roman Gladius did not end centuries ago, but yet it is still in effect today. It turns out that a modern company named Cold Steel has actually made a Roman Gladius machete that is actually used to make, well, not really make anything, more or less to destroy a bunch of hedges, sticks, small trees, shrubberies, all that. So yeah, the design totally ain't dead today. Now, here's my sources here, looking fresh as crap here, which, you know, they'll all be in the link, well, they'll all be in the description. Now, here's the second part of the greatest project on God's green earth. See you later. Before I get too deep into this, I decided to clarify a little myth that a lot of people believe that a European sword is blunt, which I promise you for a fact this thing is not blunt. They are sharp. And yeah, that was just to clarify. Which turns out that the cutting power of the Gladius is not too great, but it is enough where if your opponent is past your point, you will guaranteed wouldn't regret having a sharp edge. Which, unfortunately, even whenever your edge is not correctly aligned with your cut, it still doesn't mean it's not going to hurt. Because, I mean, not saying to go out and whack someone with a flat of your blade, but still make sure that you can get your proper edge alignment. Whoa, 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 whoa. Don't thrust like that. You're gonna harm your wrist doing it like that. With this sword was actually a thrust rather than a cut, so something to consider there. Now, generally with the handshake grip, it's just okay. It's not the best, but just, you know what, I'm just gonna leave it at that, because that's just enough. Now, if need be, you can still use the edge of the very tip of the Gladius to make a very good cut. Now, it's not going to be the most lethal cut, and it's not going to be powerful, but it's going to be enough to ward off your opponent if you just want to tell them, back off, bro, I don't want to hurt you, even though you technically just hurt them. Now, it's still great to know that if need be, you can still do a good cut with the base of the Gladius, which it's going to be powerful, and if you do it with proper technique, it will cut pretty deep. Like I said, it's still good to know what your sword can do. Now, like, just for a little abusive test. Now, like I said, this isn't supposed to be historically accurate or anything, but however, it's still nice to know what your sword can do. So, it can at least cause some very minor damage to a battering ram, and as you'll see with the spear, it does minimal damage, but it's still better than nothing though. Now, I decided to go a little over the limit to test this, but however, the Romans would have still faced opponents with spears, which I just made a little homemade spears that anyone can make at home using a stick, a knife, and or a hatchet if need be. Now, like, if I could hit it, it would be great, but so just to make it a little better, I decided to go half sorting with this, and which was a historical technique, but not known to the Romans. So this attack was not historically accurate, but this test was actually supposed to demonstrate that you want your sword to be able to counterattack up against something like a spear, in case if you've ever faced opponents, and what kind of ideal damage it would do.
Where you grab the blade to either get power.
Now, this test isn't supposed to represent anything by historical accuracy at all. It is just to show that you at least want your Gladius to cause some sort of damage to a spear, polearm, whatever. So, which it still is great to know what your weapon is still capable of doing. Which, either way, it's minimal damage, but still enough.
Hopefully I get some extra credit for this, because I mean, I can already tell this isn't going to be easy to record. Doggone it.
Here's a little fun fact that not many people knew. Did you know that the design of I can't do this. Alright, so did y'all know that, my goodness, I cannot do this. Alright, little fun fact time. Did you know that Cold Steel actually made a Gladius machete that was actually, of course, my phone rings. Hello? We want a shrubbery!
By the way, for the environmentalists, this is long dead wood. In case you just hallucinated fresh leaves spreading out. No, it's dead, trust me. This is why whenever y'all make a video out there, y'all need to get some target practice. Oh, that recording. Didn't even have the camera the right way.